Hello and welcome to Spotlight On, a production of 23 Media Ventures. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today the spotlight shines on drummer and sound artist Simon Berz. The impetus for our conversation was the release of Simon's collaboration with American bassist and sonic wizard Bill Laswell and the Japanese avant-garde trumpeter Toshinori Kondo. While Kondo passed away in October of 2020, this work, Breath vs. Beats, was not released until August 2023. Simon is a prolific artist across multiple forms and media. His perspective on creativity, process, collaboration, and sound resulted in a discussion that has stuck with me in the weeks since we recorded. Fasten your seatbelts, assume a comfortable position, and get ready for a fun ride with Simon Berz. Thank you so much for making time to do this. I'm very excited to speak with you.
It's a pleasure. It's quite emotionally for me with this release with Kondo Toshinori, which is not anymore here, and to do this in this cave in Switzerland in a wonderful landscape, but it was good too. And I'm super exhausted right now because I organizing three festivals. I had the single exhibition last week and the release and
the life of a modern artist.
And self-made, a lot of self-made stuff. And I appreciate that very much, especially with these recordings and that it's getting more international, because it's very difficult in my environment, which my school is and stuff, to explain what I'm doing with my music. And I'm super excited that you give attention to this, and I'm very happy. Thank you.
There's a lot I'm hoping to discuss with you, but maybe we can start with Breath versus Beats, since that's so timely. When you first created the tracks for this work, what is your approach? Do you improvise? Are these composed percussion pieces? It's very difficult as a listener to understand if these are compositions or improvisations that you later edit, etc.
There is a very nice expression of James Singleton from New Orleans, which is also in the film of Liquid Land, which I did 11 years ago. And in this documentation film, we are talking about improvised music. He has a statement in this film, which he explained the improvised music scene in New Orleans, which I joined right now since 14 years. And he said in this film, what you can learn is that improvised music should sound like composed music, and composed music should sound like improvised music. And I think this statement hits me a lot, because if I improvise, I try to not just play around. So I try to tell a story. And my whole topic, finally, if I improvise, it's all time playing in the moment as good as I can, not thinking, but an internalized idea of songwriting to play. And this was the thing. I was 2017 in New Orleans, and in the Marini Studios, I rented the studio for myself. And the plan was to record a solo record, which I just play absolutely freely, a solo record. The Rocking Desk, that's the title. So I went to the studio and I didn't have any ideas that I want to do that or what this. I just played my ass off in this way. I let it go. There were no MIDI stuff. It's completely analog electronics, live played out of the moment. And so I had about 1.5 hour good stuff, which I thought, yeah, I can work with that. Then it's a very difficult thing to say, okay, that's it right now. And then Kondo Toshinori, I played with him on a festival, and I did sound check with my Rocking Desk, and he came direct from the airport from Tokyo to Zurich And he was standing on stage and tipped me on the shoulder. And I saw this guy the first time in my life. At the first word, Kondo told me, recording, recording. So that was the moment which I was very blessed and surprised that the first word of Kondo was recording. So we went with Nils Peter Mollwehr and Superterz, this band, on Japan tour. And after this tour, we had some duo shows also. And then we went to Tokyo to his studio, and I showed him this solo recording. He was really into it, and he said, yeah, let's work with that. That's cool. He plays over. And then he improvised 2 tracks, sometimes 1, over my improvisations. It was very funny because the recordings were not quite properly edited. I played one song, and then the sound guy, he just let it go. I want to create a new atmosphere for a new song. I work just with analog stuff. So if I want to manipulate, as an example, the bass drum, which goes through effects and whatever, so I have just to pump the bass drum and just to trigger the bass drum and to make new sounds. And he makes crazy stuff. It's absolutely not in rhythm because I just try, a hammer and now bing, 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 boom, boom, boom. Oh, that's cool. But Kondo used this stuff also to play over. And I was really shocked. I said, no, it's impossible. And then the funny thing was with Bill Laswell that both of them, they used this track also and they played over it. I said, no, that's cool. And for me, it was a healing situation somehow, that it hasn't to be with the mindset of Kondo and Bill. I realized they are really in this express yourself, and the sound of you is interesting. And in the end, we did just the editing. We made 5 pieces: the emptiness, the fire, the water, the air, and the earth. And that's it. Yeah.
It's fascinating to hear you relate that piece about Kondo playing over essentially your prep work or your tuning or your non-intentional music, because something I wanted to talk to you about was my perception of you is that just from listening to your various projects, my perception is that you must hear music everywhere. I was listening to the Stone Slab recordings and...
Oh, okay, cool.
First of all, I should say I'm very partial to, I love landscape, soundscape, ambient music. So it wasn't a stretch for me to enjoy this, but yeah, it left me thinking that it must be interesting to be inside your ears, to hear everything as potential music. And so to hear that you were a bit surprised by Kondo and Bill's approach, it seems that they were just turning it on you.
Yeah, there are a lot of doubts. Finally, it leads me also to create my own music school in this way, that the curriculum of the music school is sound as you are. And we start from that. Even if it's wrong, it's true. It's very influenced by Joe Cage. Like the Byrds, I love this book, For the Byrds, from Joe Cage. So in improvised music, you start from even the error, from the disaster, and then you work. So it goes also very spiritually with an example in the philosophy that you take the pain, or Krishnamurti talks about that you take the pain as the raw diamond. And the pain and the suffering, this is what you have to keep in you. This is the essence, finally, which you have to work on. So you make this raw diamond to a brilliant jewelry. I think this is a wonderful metaphor to how I work, finally. And I think my deepest inspiration is perhaps I was a 7, 8 years old kid and had to make homework and had to color the sky in blue or the green grass. Very stupid thing. And I had my pencils had started to play on my lamp on the desk because they are strings and they sounded so nice. And I can move the strings and they get higher and lower. And at this moment, I think there happened something to me because My brother is 6 years older than me. I was 6, 7, and start to listen to Deep Purple, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin. Normally, I just listen through my parents to perhaps jazz, standard jazz, and classical music. And then I hear Jimi Hendrix with these feedbacks, or Hot Butter came in the radio, and I was freaking out. I said, but that's something different. And since then, I think I was all time perhaps listening and freaking out then also with electronics, because there were, to me, a ghost inside, which makes my music perhaps also today very cinematic. And I work with my microphones on the drums. In example, I have contact microphones on the cymbal. And James Singleton also told me, Simon, you make the people sounding better. And it was a very big gift from him to me, that I start to understand what I'm doing. Because as a drummer, you are the heart of the band who keeps the stuff together. And if you work with an open microphone, it's like the singer holds the microphone to the audience or whatever. So you include the soundscape in your sound. And then I have the whole electronic weapons, which I can work with delays, with distortion, with reverbs, with harmonizers, to add to the existing improvising something cinematic or electronics. I realize this is quite hard to play in different improvised music scenes. Especially I work in Berlin, and if I go there with my electronics, I'm some kind of suspect, because you don't improvise a snare drum just with that. So I extend my drumming through analog electronics, and to me, it's just fun, and it's just how I want to make this cinematic thing somehow.
You were present in Japan recording the trumpet parts. Were you present with Bill, or did he do that remotely?
Kondo did it by himself.
Oh.
And then he showed me, we went to his studio, and he did already recording. We just decided together which part is really cool, and we did some editing. But finally, I would say there's 90% of the whole recording is made by myself, then Kondo by himself, and then also Bill Laswell did it by himself. And in this way, I was very impressed how fast and how accurate it sounds. I talked right now to already many people, and they say, wow, it sounds like you did it together, and
very organic sounding.
Yeah. And this is for sure, they are highly professional musicians. I think it's also a very interesting thing, what I learned also for my future, to realize if I have connection example right now in Indonesia with gamelan players, or with musicians I play since 14 years in New Orleans, to say we have to be together if we have an idea, if we have a concept. And for sure, it's much more fun to stay together in a studio and develop this together. But the pandemic time showed us really that it's also possible to work digitally also in the music.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think that the mistake some people make is to think of it as a binary either or
exactly
proposition, whereas it's just another set of tools and techniques and opportunities. It gives you the whole globe as your palette, as opposed to where you can get within a day's flight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
one of my favorite credits on the album is Everyday Object. And I wonder, I would love to know some of those objects, but if you prefer to keep it a mystery, that's fine.
No.
Again, it goes to this idea of finding musicality all around you. And it takes me back to that story about you and the lamp.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit, about the notion that every object might unleash a sonic territory for you?
I can make some examples. In example, the Stones, you're talking about the Stones, which are also right now released, the drop. I was in holidays 14 years ago in the French Alps, South Alps, on 2,000 meters with my mountain bike and driving home. And then I realized suddenly there were a stone field under my bicycle. It sounds like Steve Reich. So I stopped and I was super fascinated about these 220 million years old slide stones. And I picked up 30 kilos in my backpack and took it to Switzerland and started to experiment. And I made this sound installation, which is dropped now. I think this is the thing, to be alert every moment how it sounds. And there are suddenly certain techniques which I found an object that you have 3 fingers and you put it on, that it's not really dumped, and you try to play on it, and then suddenly it makes crazy sounds, and then it happens. I think the one big inspiration was Nick Collins from Chicago. He wrote this wonderful book, DIY Electronics. It's a Bible of self-made electronics. And he showed me so simple stuff like a loudspeaker works with a 9-volt battery and 2 paper clamps. I just played in this workshop one day just with these paper works and paper clamps at the loudspeaker, and made feedbacks and realized, wow, electronic is so haptically, it's very interesting, you know. And then suddenly with this loudspeaker, I put a lot of trash inside and start to play, and had a little drum set on my desk, and that leads me to all different materials. Then with piezo microphones, with single coils, you can dig in the material like a microscope. And then it's going to be really interesting. And this leads me then also later to start workshops with children and also adults and musicians to learn to amplify his own instrument perhaps, but also the body, the voice, different material, and especially trash. This leads then to the environment disaster we have, that through listening to, in example, an empty trash can, a can, you can make thousands of sounds with a piezo microphone on it. And you can use it as a drum tool, or you can make sounds with that. So I just teach this also to uplift or upgrade the trash material to great instruments in this way. I did this project 10x10 to 11 in Berlin, in the Walton Gallery, which we were invited by a gallerist with Kaspar König. It's a sound artist too. And he told us, make an exhibition here. And we told him, it's difficult because my instruments I used for my shows, I cannot put them in a museum or a gallery. But we had the idea to say, let us be the exhibition, just the presence of 2 sound artists in the gallery. And we start from the first day on to build instruments out of the environmental trash. And we made a call in Berlin, bring us your stuff you don't use anymore, but you think can be something sounding good. It was so funny what the people brought us, and we start to build up in the gallery, making crazy stuff. In the evening, suddenly we start to play these new innovations, and they showed up composers, crazy improvisers, getting really interesting. That leads us to do this project also in Gabriel Voltaire in Zurich. And then it was very interesting to analyze the trash from people in Zurich. In example, they were next door a pharmacy. We went there and asked them, do you have trash? We would like to build instruments out of it. And they said, no, we recycled everything yesterday. Okay, then Switzerland is very high in recycling and stuff. And the next day, the one employer came to us and brought us a new scanner for 500 euros And she told us, yeah, we found this, we cannot use, we have another system. We don't know what to do with it, use it. It was a brand new in the package, 500 euros. And so we start to hack this new model. And it was very funny because I can make music with barcodes. So we went to the grocery store and weighted, in example, potatoes, 2 grams potatoes, 5 grams potatoes, 5 kilos potatoes. It makes all time a new barcode. And we put that on a notation score. And I had the possibility to play 5 grams of potatoes, 3 kilos of potatoes and stuff like that. And it worked. And I thought, wow, that would be very cool to have a symphony orchestra playing just vegetables. But the problem is if you make DIY circuit bending stuff, it's all time a risk. And during a show, it died. And then it's gone. And this is also something which I think it's very interesting, that it's not sure, it's not safe. And in our world, which is everything should be safe, nothing is safe, but this is a very nice experience. And then I did also the project in New Orleans, the same thing. And then we made this film Liquid Land out of it, because we want to give a focus on this disaster of global warming, trash, and social behaving. And this was incredible deep. Yeah, this experience was very deep to see these people working together, playing music together, and also to see the impact of music, the social impact of music.
Do you see regional variations in the trash that you get for source material?
Extremely. Right now I have my single exhibition, which I show my works, some of them, and I have there the deer. The deer is a telephone wooden stand, and I found the old rotten sofa on the streets in New Orleans, and we took the springs out, and I fixed the springs on it, and then I played a microphone, the strings, and it's very magic what comes out. In example, in Berlin, somebody brought us these candles, these electronic candles you have on the restaurants on the top, and they blinky, and they have a battery inside. And somebody brought that, and I thought, yeah, come on, that's very difficult to make sound out of it. But my friend Kaspar, he had the idea just to take out the lamp. In the lamp, there are for sure 2 channels, and we just put 2 microphone channels in this lamp. And you cannot imagine, there were Chinese children's song came out. So very cheap Chinese stuff in Berlin, then the rotten beds in New Orleans, and high-end scanners new as trash in Zurich. It means a lot, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a video of a sound artist. I'm going to get the technical word wrong, but they were essentially probes, and inserted them into different fruits and vegetables and had them connected to inputs into a computer. And I guess the sugars or the alkalines in the fruits and vegetables generated different tones.
Yeah.
And they were beautiful. As source sounds, they were absolutely beautiful.
I was right now in a very nice sound art exhibition in the Swiss Alps in Appenzell, which was Carlos, I forgot his full name. He's a biologist, and he works with lasers. They can detect the nanometers vibrations. And he used them in the fields, and they put them on the leaves where insects are. And he recording the sex calls from the insects and makes them hearable with octavize or whatever, because they are high frequency or low frequency. And it was mind-blowing. I was sitting in this rotten little house in the middle of the fields, and he had subwoofers, and you hear these tinder sounds of the insects finally. And it's like a composition. And they are the so really it's like improvised music. And this is the sex calls of insects. And right now, I think worldwide in this experimental sound art world, through the new computing and stuff like that, the technique gets more better. We start to understand how the nature works. And for me, I'm more right now not in the biological world. I'm more in the geological world, which is also living, but it's much more difficult to dig in there a sound. But it's also possible. There is another friend of mine in Switzerland. He listened to mountains with high-end microscope, as a sounds microscope somehow, and he can really listen to the mountains. They are sounds also, if you have the right device. To me, I don't want to dig in so deep in digital hardware stuff to detect the sound. You need all time somebody who listens to it. The sound, to me, I think it's in the world, but nobody's there, nobody can talk about. So for me, it means if I do sound art, I show that I am there and I hear it like that. It's like a composer, like Bach, he wrote his songs. And I say, I write my songs in this way in the French Alps. If I found the stones and I improvise there, that's just my way to do it.
Could you talk about the difference such that it exists between a sound artist and a musician?
Honestly, to me, it's just branding and give the people an idea. I studied transdisciplinarity fine arts. And since then, I'm completely lost, because to explain somebody what means transdisciplinary is already very difficult. And I think that's exactly the thing. I would say I work as a drummer. That's my thing. Then for sure with electronics and sounds, but then also on spaces, mountains, caves, whatever. And then the very important thing is the social environment. That finally, since 14 years, New Orleans, it's clear. You are all time in the social feedback in the city. I think this is also leads me back to this transdisciplinary approach. We have to create something new together, and we don't know where we go finally. And Haraway, staying with the trouble, I think it's also a very nice way to explain perhaps also my thinking that, yeah, we stay in the problem. It's a very difficult situation for humankind, and we have to deal with that. And this leads me to say, yeah, it's fucked up, but what I'm doing now? This is the general question all the time. Also, if I see the art world, just to ask myself, is there hope in art, Or I just use this disaster to make more smoke. The ice is melting, and you make an ice block melting like Olufsen did in the French main place. And for sure, it's very intense and the people start to think about, but I try to point on the problem, but then also to make something wonderful out of it or something scary. Otherwise, I wouldn't work, in example, with children's and with my school, because this is the future and we have to give them trust and hope and the way to express themselves.
It speaks to, I think, a little bit of intention, but it also speaks to if the art as it relates to environmental catastrophe,
Mm.
can raise awareness. It can maybe suggest paths or raise consciousness so people maybe take action or choose to learn more. But there's also another side of it that you sort of briefly alluded to, which is there's a nihilistic potentiality where if you're just using the catastrophe as source material, I don't, and I can't point to examples of that. It's more theoretical, but it's possible. If the artist feels no sense of humanity or obligation.
Mm. We live in a very capitalist world, and it's very easy. If I see Hollywood, an example, it's very easy to frightening people. And it's also sound-wise very easy. I use a metal bank, and I have a contact mic on it, and I have a subwoofer, and I have an octavizer, and I make boom, and it makes like in the T-Rex is coming in the Jurassic World. This is the easiest way. It's very nice with children. And maybe play T-Rex and I can make an example with just this music, which I see in these blockbusters. It's so overloaded, mostly no silence, which I think it's very frightening if it's getting really silent, but it's too much of boom and all the time. I think I make a lot of boom and I like it, but I think in between you need a dynamic, and it's easy to frightening people, and it makes a lot of attention. And if we see right now, in except the media also, you don't talk about good things. You're talking about disasters because the people think, oh, that's so. It's to explain and to make hope. It's much more difficult than to irritate people and frightening people.
Yeah. And do you feel a sense of responsibility to make hope?
Perhaps it's my Catholic education, but which what I hate. But
well, let me interrupt before I let you answer. I ask you that question both. Do you feel that responsibility in multiple ways, as an artist, as a citizen, as a Catholic?
Ex-Catholic.
Ex-Catholic. Yeah.
No, I come from. I study handicap pedagogy first. Before I study in New York, then drums and stuff like that. So it was a long path. I started to play drums very early, but it's not like in America, which you have much more possibilities really to digging early to show the people, I want to be a professional drummer. It leads me until 28, finally. I study with Joshua Meyer in New York, made the Drummers Collective and stuff like that. But that leads me then in the end to be a drummer. But I was also very happy that I had this psychological knowing and this pedagogic, didactic knowing. Perhaps right now, if I think about, leads me also to that to tell a story, also to work with children. So you see these eyes of a 5-year-old boy or girl sitting the first time on a drum, and you say to them, let's be birds. And we fly around the drums. And it's just beautiful how the kid is playing the first time this instrument completely free. And it takes me 5 minutes, and suddenly we are elephants, and we play elephants, and we have already quarter notes. And then we have the jumbo, we have the backbeat, the jumbo, and stuff like that. And then you have the papagay and these animals. And we play just these animals, and that leads me to hope in this way. Then just to see if you are free as a kid or as a humankind anyway, the creativity what we have leads us to new ideas and leads us hopefully also to learn to live together peacefully on this world. In this way, I'm absolutely enthusiastic still.
Yeah.
I believe in humankind in this way, yes.
That's beautiful. We'll be back with more Spotlight On right after this break. If you like what you've heard so far, please share us with a friend and leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. For past episodes, web-only exclusives, and to join our mailing list, visit us online at spotlightonpodcast.com. And now, back to Spotlight On. It doesn't surprise me, both as a drummer and as someone interested in environmental concerns, that you would end up in and have a connection to New Orleans, where it seems like a lot of these threads come together. But could you tell me the story of Simon in New Orleans? It's not immediately obvious how you would end up there.
Yeah, it was for me also crazy, because New Orleans, we have in Ascona Jazz Festival, which is just jazz, traditional, and old people go there and listen to this thread jazz. And so I had all time this very branded image, New Orleans is thread jazz, and it's boring. But I played also in a wedding band once, which we played Louis Armstrong stuff and thread jazz also. And this was very funny because the people loved it. And then I end up on a tour with a duo, highly experimental. I just had a table full of children instruments and effects and all circuit bending. It was just really noisy like hell. And the bass player, Klaus Janek, he played the bass through Ableton Live. And so it was a big mess of noise. Andy Durta, he's an extremely good connect organizer with Scatter Jazz in New Orleans. He booked us 3 times in a week in New Orleans on the tour. We enter up there. We had the first show in the Hi-Ho Lounge, and it never happened to me that I played with Aurora Nealand and Helen Gillet the first time with 2 crazy, extremely good musicians, and we had a lot of fun. And there were people were screaming in this improvised music, go, 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 go. And that never happened to me. You know, if you come from Europe, if you play this music, they drink a glass of wine, and after the show, they come to you and they say, yeah, it was very special. And you know, okay, they do like it's too far for them. But in New Orleans, I found some kind a second hometown or a second birthplace that I realized this place leads me to that what I am, and I'm okay. So the curriculum of the school, of Bada Boom, of my school, is really deeply influenced by the energy of New Orleans. First of all, the beats, and it's a birth of jazz. You can explain finally the whole music history through this city. It's also very interesting to explain the danger, what it means to live in danger of the ocean, of the Lake Pontchartrain, of the Mississippi, of the violence and all this, of the suffering of the slaves, the whole very bad story of the slavery and also of the natives. It's so a rich content of history, of music. It's fantastic.
How much time do you spend there?
Before pandemic, I went mostly once or twice for 3 months there, just to explore, to produce music films, which we did. Then also exhibitions I made. Right now, the last 2 times, I start to show also my fine arts, which is also very interesting. I think it's after many years, suddenly I realized I do also inspiring New Orleans scene. I thought all time it's inverse, but obviously it starts really to feedbacking in a very nice way. Daily, I miss New Orleans. Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? That's really the thing.
Tell me a bit about your solo exhibitions. first of all, what mediums or media do they span? And when it's specifically in the sound art realm, is it like what you described earlier that it's always you in performance, or is it ever like installation?
A drop is there right now. It's also the release of drop right now. So that's an installation, a sound installation. So just running. What I realized, especially during pandemic, that the main energy or the main meaning of my visual art is prints somehow, because I put my chopsticks or drumsticks in ink and starts to play on paper. This is also the cover, by the way, Breath versus Beats. It's also made by myself and Yota, the son of Kondo. So I start to think about what happens if you take an inspiration, an improvisation, composition, reading, printing, reading, recording all together. This was finally coming up to me during my studies at the art school in Zurich, because I realized we have right now so many new music production tools, which you can, Fruity Loops, in example. You download a beat or sounds and you're able to create a proper song in 5 minutes, finally. If you are used to, you can really make da-da-da-da-da, and it sounds like, woohoo. That leads me to the idea, okay, what happens if we think everything in the same time? So I amplify my drumsticks, I have certain kind of effects, modular stuff, and start to beat on paper and make music at the same time. And then I see it, and I see that's taka-dang, or the chika-takoker, or stuff like that. And I can read it. So that was fun, but I thought the social interaction was missing, why I do not take that. And then I had the idea to play this piece on 100 meters paper, on a paper roll. And a very highly professional dancer, Gabriel Obergfell, he pulled my paper in the front of me. I watched him how he danced, and I played the score to him. So I made the music and he was dancing with my score. Right now we have a score of 100 meters, and the end of my exhibition, we do a festival, which I will pull out this 100 meters again on the street, and the people can stand around, and I have another musician and an improviser and another dancer. They interpret this score again. So this is one piece, but that's a performance. And another drawing, a print, is I made with Skuli Sverrisson in Iceland, a record. It's called Shifted Eruption, which is a very deep drone. Again, I thought to produce this, it's cost me a lot of money, and it was pandemic. And I start to improvise with this recording. I had an old bass amp with a loudspeaker, and I just put a paper on the bass amp loudspeaker and had some ink and put an Icelandic stone on this paper. And then I start to play the record. And the stone starts to jump through this vibration on the paper, and it makes extremely beautiful eruptions of splits of ink. But I didn't accept that the stone is, during the vibration, the paper gets weak. And after 10 minutes, the stone was falling through and the ink was going in the loudspeaker. So I thought, oh, I shouldn't do that. But after it was dry, it looks so beautiful, because it looks like a falcon, because the paper gets three-dimensional, and it looks like a falcon who was exploded. So I made a series of 5 pictures, all time the same procedure, 5 times, a stone, an ink, played through this. So this papers hangs in the exhibition. And another thing was that with this recording, with Skuli Sverrisson, I thought, okay, let's do 10 records. And I went to a high professional recording studio, Central Dub in Bern, and I told them the idea, can you direct cut 10 records? And they say, yeah, we can do, but it costs a lot, I said, fuck it, do it. So I had 10 single printed records. And the performance in the Alps, which I made an exhibition performance, 10 days. So the beginning at 6 o'clock in the evening, I just played in a cave, very dark with nice light. Again, the same thing, but not with ink. I did it with graphite. And so I had 10 graphite prints of this recording. And then I put them together. In the front is the print, and in the back is the record. And in Berlin, I work with Malte. He's a highly professional guy. With his company, he frames pictures. They frame for Art Basel and everything. So it was quite funny to come there as a musician to say, hey, I want to have a cover, but it should be also a picture. He was very creative, and he made a very nice, very expensive cover, which you see the artwork, and you can turn it, and then behind is the record. And so it's a 3-dimensional art piece somehow. And the cool thing is that I don't release it digital. So this record is really just on the vinyl. I sell it right now as an art piece, and it's the analog NFT for me somehow.
There's something that you've mentioned multiple times that I wanted to ask you about, which is, what is behind your affinity or preference for analog?
I feel it. I think I work a lot with loudspeakers on the drums, and I have an amplified stick, and I can just go inside. There's also the recording you hear, stuff like that, or amplifying a cymbal, and you touch the cymbal and you make a feedback through the cymbal. It's just, I feel it on my skin. For sure, I can do this all electronics, also digital. There are reasons right now also to think about to change my system to the digital world. But the thing is, first of all, I don't like to watch even more in a computer. I think the energy also on stage, if you have a computer on stage, it's a different. The screen is like a person, or even worse, not a photographer or a filmmaker. It can be very irritating. And I do not find it to see shows which people are watching in screens. It's take some kind of soul of the people. That's perhaps very esoteric shit, and the analog stuff I can better repair than the digital. If I have a guitar effect and I see, oh, there's something rotten, I can open it and perhaps solder the contacts. If I have a problem with my computer and I'm on the road, you don't have a show. And you have to do anyway already all work on the computer. So if I want to practice, I don't like to deal with the computer also.
Yeah, even more
the drum set. I'm a little bit old school perhaps, but
well, it's interesting because as an audience member, when I go to an evening of what I'll call experimental music, not confined to that, but when I go to any kind of performance and I see, for example, an ambient musician with a bank of old synthesizers and mixers and doing their thing, I find it very intriguing. There's a wizardry to it. When I go to a performance of that same music and I see someone with a laptop, I find myself trying to figure out what's going on in a way that I'm not preoccupied with when I see analog instruments. I don't necessarily have too much qualitative judgment, but I notice it. And I don't know what's happening live versus what's being generated.
Exactly.
And I find that I care.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we talked before. It's not black or white. I think there are so many, so great musicians. They do fantastic music with electronics, just digital. And it's also for sure incredible innovation right now with AI, what's going on and stuff like that. But even that, I realize perhaps I stay really analog, because as a dinosaur in this AI world, why not? You have to find your own language, and it's very dangerous that as an artist, or in general in the art world, you are not focused on the content, you are focused on the media. I don't like to go to a show to see new medias, a new VR camera, and you can do that, then it's like to go to the NAMM show. And then it's very fancy what you can do, and I like it. I say, yeah, I want to have that also. But what is the message of the person who plays a show? What do you want to say? Are you happy, or you're angry, or you want to protest, or you want a content to tell a story, and to feel that it's a dangerous thing with all this new media we have, that we forget the psychologically inner motivation why you do it. The destruction of the technology is so heavy to our brain that it's very dangerous that we forgot ourselves somehow, what we want to express finally. I see that often if I teach workshops for students, that they are much better than me, musicians, whatever. But I feel in the end, if I see the work, it looks great, it's insane, but I feel an emptiness. I saw the video right now of Peter Brötzmann. He died some weeks ago, and I was really impressed that he said that exactly also in an art school. Let's be yourself. There are so many better saxophone players than Peter Brötzmann, but Peter Brötzmann was a monolith of incredible, inspiring free jazz music. So I think my roots come from there somehow. Jimi Hendrix, Nina Simone, all this, they are unique, absolutely unique. B.B. King, you hear in the first note, that's B.B. King. And this leads me to my school, also to myself, that I hope later some people hear, oh, that's Simon. That would be probably my biggest compliment for myself.
Yeah. Well, to bring it back to the Breath versus Beats project, I've long felt that way about Laswell. Like when I hear his bass sound on a project, it's so recognizable.
Yeah, exactly.
As a bass player, he's so minimalist, but it's so effective.
Yeah. And the story is it's very kind. I was 16 and I listened to the material, Doral Bill.
Yeah.
And you cannot imagine how happy I was that Bill did this, that I was a teenager and was a fan of this music. And now I'm here, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, it's incredible. He's a perhaps under-celebrated musical treasure, but his fingerprints are on so much important music from the last 40 years or so.
Yeah.
Simon, thank you so much.
I'm very blessed to be on your show.
Well, it's a joy to have you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Simon Berz. And as always, thank you for listening to Spotlight On, a production of 23 Media Ventures. I'm your host and executive producer, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and edited by Michael Donaldson, with theme music by Q Burn's Abstract Message. For past episodes, web-only exclusives, to make a donation to support our production, and to join our mailing list, visit us online at spotlightonpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.